This is Democracy Watch. Mark, I think anybody who's watched my channel knows that I have been beating the drum about the idea of Schedule F being enacted. This is Donald Trump being able to change civil servants, federal employees who are designated as civil servants, into political appointees. That seems to finally be making its way into reality right now. Can you explain the implications of this latest move by Donald Trump?
Yeah, it could be devastating to the federal workforce. I mean, Schedule F is something that was in Project 2025 that you, as you point out, beat the drum about. And, all the Republicans in the Trump campaign were like, Schedule F, huh? No, it doesn't ring a bell. Well,
Yeah.
here it is. It's now become a reality. And what they are going to be able to do if they pull this off, and that's an if, but if they pull this off, they will be able to replace, by their estimates, 50,000 career civil servants, people who have protection under the civil service laws. They'll be able to replace them with Trump lackeys, minions, and sycophants. And these are at the top end of the civil service scale. So these are not, the assistant to big balls over a Doge.
Right.
These are people who Donald Trump wants to replace because, frankly, they're getting in his way. These are the people who are standing up to Doge. These are the people who, you periodically read about the guy who wouldn't go along, right? These are the people who are standing up to Stephen Miller and Donald Trump and Pam Bondi and all of the terrible people in the administration. And in one fell swoop, they want to be able to fire them and then replace them.
Okay, so let's just dig right into the what I feel is the most important part to discuss here, and that is the implications for our law enforcement agencies. So, for example, if you have career civil servants who right now make up these law enforcement agencies, the DOJ, the FBI, and you replace those folks with political appointees whose adherence is not to the Constitution or to the law, but rather to Donald Trump himself. What can that mean come election time when they either have to investigate legitimate claims of voter suppression, for example, of these right-wing militias, versus their willingness to embrace these bogus stories? Like, for example, in 2020, we heard God knows how many stories about fake ballots being cast, vote dumps being taking place in Milwaukee or Philadelphia or Detroit.
Yeah, look, this is all very dangerous, and I wish I could tell you that it won't have implications until we get to that point in 2026. It's going to have implications from day one. I mean, the fact is you have this two-part pincer movement that's already taking place, which is you have Elon Musk emptying out the federal government, using the tactics that Doge has. This now will be an additional accelerant on top of that, targeting people. So this is already a problem now. We are already watching as the priorities of the Department of Justice have shifted and have embraced election denialism. We already have an attorney general who's an election denier. We already have Harmeet Dillon in place in the head of the Civil Rights Division, which oversees voting, that has withdrawn, according to Democracy Docket, 7 cases that were aimed, as you say, at preventing voter suppression. They've basically backed away from those.
Yeah.
And the bad stuff is now going to come. So what Schedule F does is layers on top of that. So I don't want people to think that all is hunky-dory now and it will only have implications when we get close to elections. This is going to have an immediate bite. And Brian, this brings to another topic that you and I have discussed, which is everyone has focused right now on Elon Musk's effort to cut people from the federal government. This is clearly, though, Schedule F is part of an effort not to cut headcount, but to replace headcount, right? Like we talked about the fact that they did away with the public integrity section almost in its entirety. This is the nonpartisan people who would prosecute crimes involving elections alike, and they've done away with the careerists there. This allows them to do away with the last of them, by the way. But the point is, it will also allow Donald Trump to refill these positions with his political lackeys rather than having to go through the civil service protections that would be afforded.
Right, so it's not just eliminating the barriers to what he wants to do, but it's actually putting in place people who will accelerate those processes that he's looking to accomplish. So I guess that raises the next obvious question here, which is, what are the legal barriers to doing what he wants to do? I know that there was an executive order that Joe Biden passed at the end of his presidency, but obviously, those are only as strong as the duration of the president who's in office to actually enforce that.
Yeah. So, I mean, one of the problems that we have right now is with anticipatory obeyance. People are obeying these executive orders even before they have teeth. And even before they are ruled whether they are lawful or not. I mean, the fact is, the majority of the executive orders that is coming out of the White House and the other policy actions that we see from Doge and the like, they're being challenged in court, and the people challenging these executive orders are winning. Right. But what's happening, Brian, is that people are obeying in advance. So what will happen, I fear, is they will say, here's Schedule F. We're now sending pink slips to 50,000 people. I mean, that's a lot of people in the federal government in one fell swoop. And the question, Brian, is how many of them say, I want to fight and stick around to keep their jobs? And how many of them are like, well, you know what? I'm just getting out of here. I mean, this is like, this is the breaking point. And then there are these vacancies. And when Donald Trump then tries to fill those vacancies with political appointees rather than with career civil servants, again, like how many people are going to fight for those positions saying, wait, I was denied this opportunity under the civil service test that it should have been, and this shouldn't have gone to a political appointee. So, this is the problem that we have right now is, Brian, is you and I talk every day about the need to fight. And you are fighting, and I am fighting, and there are a lot of people fighting. But there are also a lot of people who are just trying to live their daily lives in the government sector. And they are, for good reason or bad, and I can't fault a lot of them. They are just giving up. And as a result, you wind up with these terrible, terrible results. And so that's what I really worry about.
Well, a quick note, just for folks who are watching right now, to the point of finding the fighters. Mark and his team are doing that on a daily basis. One very small step we can all take to support him and to be able to benefit from the fearless journalism that they put out is to sign up for Democracy Docket. It's the news outlet Mark founded to focus on everything voting and elections. Highly recommend you sign up. I'll put the link right here on the screen and also in the post description of this video. Mark, what is to stop this administration from, for example, if they fire 50,000 career civil servants, from just hiring people who they themselves very well know are political appointees, but just kind of pretending in the coy way they always pretend that, the people who are replacing them with aren't political appointees. They're just as qualified as the person who held this job before, knowing full well that these are the Stephen Miller acolytes of the world. These are the Kash Patels and Dan Bonginos. And so, we know on the outside what purpose these people fill, but of course they can try and preserve or maintain some degree of plausible deniability when they put people in these jobs who are, clearly political appointees.
Yeah, I think that's a really important and smart point that people should pay attention to, because this is not going to be the last 50,000, right? This is the beginning of Schedule F. And I always have to remind people, we are only in the first months of the Trump administration. So, what Schedule F looks like today may not be what Schedule F or its successors look like down the road. And at some point, you're exactly right. Whether it's in this first 50,000 or the next 100th or the next 300 or the next 500,000, they will reach a point in which they are going to say, okay, Your Honor, you're right. These have to be nonpartisan positions. They have to be on the merit. But we've redefined what merit is.
Right.
You, Your Honor, can't tell us how we define what is meritorious, right. and you can't micromanage every person hired. And so, that's going to be, I think, like a reality. And also, Brian, and we've talked about this in the context of, some of the executive orders targeting, for example, law firms, not only law firms, but law firms being an example, which is, if the president of the United States says, I only want a certain kind of person hired, and you are a career person trying to keep your job, and you are in charge of hiring, it's going to affect you when you look at 2 resumes or 5 resumes. Or 10 resumes, right? Are you really looking to pick a fight with the president of the United States? Are you looking to be outed on Truth Social or by Elon Musk's X as some deep state operative? Because it's not beyond the Stephen Millers of the world to do that, right? If the hiring doesn't go their way in the civil service process as it currently exists or as it's reformed, they will target the individual career civil servants who are doing the hiring. And so for a lot of them, it's going to have this effect, this drifting effect anyway. And that is how, autocrats win. That's how autocrats gain power. That's how autocrats stack the government with their loyalists. Some of it's through the blunt force of things like we're firing people. Some of it is through the soft power of trying to get people to resign, who are, who just don't want to fight anymore. And then a lot of it is just by creating this momentum within the bureaucracy to please dear leader.
Right.
And so this is going to be a big struggle for democracy. This is going to be a big challenge for a government on the merits, because Donald Trump doesn't want government on the merits.
I think what you said is so important about how this is only the first 50,000. And we know full well, because we've seen this pattern emerge from the Trump administration where, okay, they go after a couple of law firms, and then that couple turns into 5, which turns into 10, which turns into 15. And so clearly the thing that you and I have spoken about quite a bit is the importance of pushing back right now, immediately, before we get to a point where Trump then feels emboldened because he recognizes how easy it is to own people in this space, how easy it is to win in certain fights that he's picked. And that's why, by the way, and I know that we've beat this drum so many times, but it's worth reiterating here, that is why it is so dangerous for the Paul Weisses of the world, for the Jeff Bezoses and Mark Zuckerbergs, for the ABC Newses, everybody who opts to capitulate to Trump because they think it'll make their lives just a little bit easier, make the entire space more dangerous for everybody, because their weakness basically shows Trump that there's blood in the water and that he has carte blanche to just barrel ahead and do this not just with law firms, not just with tech companies, not just with news outlets, not just with universities, but now we're seeing right here with the federal, the civil servant sector itself. And so can you speak about that issue in particular, this idea that, yes, he's just targeting 50,000, and it doesn't feel like a lot of people when you have hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people who comprise the broader career civil servant sector in the federal government, but this idea that he's not going to stop with the first 50,000.
Yeah, look, courage is contagious and cowardice is contagious. And we have seen courage be contagious. I mean, look at the lawyers who are in court fighting every single day. Yeah. That has been contagious. You've seen lawyers volunteer and want to join organizations and law firms doing that work. But cowardice is contagious also. I mean, you mentioned, it wasn't just that one legacy media billionaire capitulated. Once one did, they all then followed suit and they all got into a bidding war. Yeah. It wasn't just when Paul Weiss capitulated. Sure, it was the first one, but then it set off a bidding war. Paul Weiss, for its capitulation, gave $40 million of free legal services to Donald Trump's causes. By the time we got to the last one that capitulated, that number's up to $125 million, right? So cowardice is also contagious. And the risk here is that, you see the 50,000 who are replaced under Schedule F. You see the DOJ purging and emptying of the government. And what that does is that just creates a snowballing effect, that the next round of government employees think, well, what's the point of trying to fight? He's going to get me eventually. He's going to get me through one process or another. And so I might as well just leave. And I'm not going to say that those people are cowards like the law firms, because they're not. But it is a contagion that spreads. And I'd add one more thing. The contagion also spreads in the tactics that he uses. I mean, a lot of the tactics that we saw in the first days, the legacy media and everybody were decrying. Where are they? Where's the outrage now?
Yeah.
Where's the outrage over Schedule F? We had a lot of, we saw the legacy media, cover when DOJ was doing the so-called voluntary retirements. Remember that illegal scheme? But where is, but you don't see this Schedule F thing, which was on the front page, by the way, of the pro-democracy media. It's something you and I covered. Oh, I mean, how many times did you and I cover the
countless
prospects of Schedule F?
Yeah.
But now that it's here, the legacy media is kind of like shrugging its shoulders, largely around this. Another example is, AmeriCorps. This is a program that takes people who are recent graduates from college, typically, sends them out into communities of need domestically, and they essentially volunteer. I mean, it's like literally like a volunteer program. They get a very small stipend from the federal government, but they largely volunteer at the state and local level to help make America's poorest communities and hardest hit communities safer. One of the things they get, Brian, for being in AmeriCorps is you get preference into hiring into the federal government after AmeriCorps is over.
Yeah.
So now they have disbanded AmeriCorps. It both deprives communities of what they need. It also deprives this pipeline into the federal government, which plays into this whole thing about replacing who's going into the federal government. But you don't see, those are dots you and I connect.
Yeah.
Those are not dots you're seeing connected in the legacy media. They're barely covering any of this.
Right. Well, let's finish off with this question, because I think this is probably the one worth asking most. But what do we do from here? What are the steps to stop this? What recourse do we have? Where will we expect this fight to be fought?
Yeah. So look, I am sure there is going to be litigation over this, because there should be, and the President of the United States does not have the power. I'm going to say this for the 19th time. The President of the United States does not have the power through executive order to nullify statutes. He does not have the power to overturn court decisions. He does not have the power to amend the Constitution. These are all things that Donald Trump is claiming in one form or another he has to do, and including in this instance. And he doesn't have that power unless we give it to him.
Yeah.
Unless the legacy media treats it as a debate, which they do. I mean, you can look at what they're saying about the poor individual who was sent illegally from Maryland to the Gulag in El Salvador. Look at the language they use. I think there was an article recently that said that in one of the big outlets that said that two pictures are being painted. What do you mean two pictures are being painted?
Right.
Like, one of them is the facts, and one of them are the lies that Donald Trump and his administration
It's like dispute explodes over 2 + 2. No, who could be right? Nobody knows.
Right. And in the legal world, the question is how, are these big law firms, they are going to be tasked now to fulfill their hundreds of millions of dollars of obligations to Donald Trump. And what are they going to do? Are they going to continue to capitulate and collaborate, or are they going to find a backbone? Because, like I said, we're only a few months in this administration. And if we don't put up a stand now against these kinds of things like Schedule F, then frankly, they're just going to multiply. And it's going to become harder and harder and harder as more and more people capitulate, as more and more institutions capitulate, as the media's coverage is just, I mean, Brian, I'm like out of words to describe how terrible the legacy media is at describing what is happening to democracy right now.
Right.
But we all need to just stay grounded and not let that Overton window shift, because if that happens, then it's just going to be harder down the road.
Well, look, you have been a leader in ensuring that Overton window doesn't shift, and I would highly recommend for everybody who's watching right now, if you are not yet signed up for Democracy Docket, please do yourself a favor, do this country a favor, sign up for Democracy Docket. Again, I'll put the link right here on the screen and also in the post description of this video. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen.
I'm Mark Elias.
This is Democracy Watch.